So how does the virtual healthcare model and the brick and mortar healthcare model support each other?
Well, I think when I left NextCare and started MeMD, I went around to urgent cares and pitched them on the idea of, wouldn't it be great during your provider's downtime that they could see patients from all over the state? And if they had more than one license all over multiple states, at the time I think I had 30 licenses. And almost to a person, to a urgent care center, except one, they said, well, yeah, but we're going to steal our own business. In other words, for the patients that normally come to us, they'll just come virtually now, where the charges are half. And why would we want to do it to ourselves? And I said, yeah, I think some people will do that, but you'll have, your urgent care sees people in about a 3 to 4 mile radius statistically. So wouldn't you want to have access to the whole state? And that way also you can get your name out there to the folks in other parts of the state. And literally, I could not get anybody to buy off on that concept, probably because I was a bad salesperson. But now most urgent cares have a telemedicine component to what they're doing. But back then, and for multiple years after, I couldn't get anybody to buy into that.
That's interesting. So going back to your ER days, what were the problems you were seeing there that, inspired you to create NextCare to solve those issues?
Well, I'm sitting in an emergency department right now, and it's a brand new freestanding, so it's not super busy. Of course, when you called, it was. And probably half the patients I've seen today don't need to be in the emergency department. And when I went into emergency medicine, what I liked about it was taking care of critical patients. I liked doing the procedures. I liked really sick patients. And I saw over the years, more and more patients were utilizing it as their primary care physician for a number of reasons. One, the lack of primary care physicians, the lack of access. And number two, when those patients came in, they shared a disproportionate amount of the costs. So people would come in with a UTI or bronchitis or something simple would often walk out with a $600 to $900 bill between the hospital and facility bill and the professional component, the physician bill, and then the radiology and lab and every other thing. They were literally getting crushed with the cost of it. And so for an urgent care model, our goal is to keep the net revenue per patient around $120. And so oftentimes patients were paying 20%, 18% of what they spend in the emergency department. And it was much quicker oftentimes as well because we were, at least in NextCare, we were hyper efficient.
And so with regard to the urgent care, and how did you see them when you were starting NextCare? Did you talk to, your expertise is in emergency medicine, but did you talk to primary care, family care, and internal medicine and try to see where you could make the urgent cares work where they couldn't? Sometimes now when you call a primary care physician and you need to see someone immediately, you're scheduled still a few days out. So how are you able to mold the urgent care to get right into that sliver between, the community medicine where you need to make an appointment that's a couple days out and then not have to go into the emergency room, which should be for critical care?
So when I started, I talked to everybody. First off, none of the health plans had any sort of urgent care benefits for the patients, nor did they have an urgent care payment structure for urgent care since there weren't any. So that was the initial big leap, getting the health plans to buy into it. So next it was going on the primary care office and saying, look, we're not competing with you. Just after hours, on weekends, on holidays, we're here. We'll refer your patients back to you after the visit. So we're not trying to steal patients. We went to great pains making sure the primary care folks knew we weren't trying to co-opt their patients for our own. And then we went to emergency departments too and said to them, if you have patients that you're seeing who have no primary care to follow up with, and follow-up's a big deal in the emergency department, feel free to send them to us. And we're happy to act as that stop between the emergency department and finding the primary care doctor for follow-up. So we kind of pitched it to pretty much every segment of healthcare.
And were they receptive?
It took a while. it took a while for the patients as well. I mean, the patient education, this took a few years because patients, we were in Denver opening up, and a patient said to me, so I have to be sicker to come to an urgent care than I do into an emergency department. And I thought to myself, I'm screwed. Because to me, this was just a no-brainer concept of why this fits in the healthcare space and how it fits in. And I found myself continually having to educate people on the place for urgent care, which today seems totally ridiculous.
Right.
But 27 years ago, it's just the way it was. It just wasn't a concept out there in most places in the country.